Levine Heil Star fam. Green juice day. This is two kinds of apple, a pear, a cucumber, and a knob of ginger. I have been fired twice in my radio career. And both times had nothing to do with my on-air performance. Neither time had anything to do with how talented I was or what the station brass thought of me as a on-air personality. I do my job with excellence. But interestingly enough, both times that I have been fired from radio jobs has had something to do with me standing up for what is right. I'm not going to talk about the first one. I'm going to talk about the second one. Some moons ago, I was working at a local radio station, and it was an exciting time. Got my contract. Everything was all laid out in my contract about what my duties were. And I did those duties with excellence because I'm excellent at what I do. And so it was interesting. Once I got there, I realized that what was presented to me was not exactly what was actually expected of me. There were things that I was asked to do that were not in my contract. I'm not going to get too deep into this because there's some things going on behind the scenes. But the gist of it is that I still did those things, but I did them within the scope of my personal integrity. And what I also noticed that was going on was that the people who had already been in this company for some time had already acquiesced to what the company was wanting for them to do and in the ways that the company, even though there was a line being towed that I was unwilling to tow, but that they were not only willing to tow, but for all intents and purposes, go over the line, be excellent at this. I know I'm being vague, but being vague on purpose. So at some point, I was there for a little while, and I was noticing that, all of our manager meetings were rife with complaints. Folks were just like, it's not fair, and this is trash, and whatever else. And so I got the really interesting idea to, well, why don't we organize? Why don't we look into having a union here? And I realized that there were some touch and go things. So I just did my due diligence just to look it up and see what that looked like. And it turned out that there was a broadcasting union that we could become a part of. And the only thing that was required is that all of us said yes or no, right? And I was very clear that I was uninterested in being the face of this thing. I was very clear, and I said, the only thing I did was do the due diligence. Y'all have been here and you wasn't interested. Here I am, and this is what seems like it makes the most sense, so that we actually get to do the things that we want to do, and we have some bargaining power with which all of us will be paid properly. We would not be required to do things that are outside of our contract, either that, or they would have to be more clear about what's in our contract. They wouldn't have to come up with new things whenever they felt like. They wouldn't change the our pay structures or our bonus structures or any of those things just on a whim. Basically just doing the bare minimum. And I was talking to people individually. I don't know, I was covertly organizing, even though I said I was uninterested in being the face. But so cut to a little bit fast forward, and there are some more conversations being had, and there are some meetings being had, and I started to get yeses. And almost immediately when I started to get some yeses, but I want to tell you about the no's. The people that were uninterested in pursuing this further, the energy, I'm not going to say verbatim because I don't remember it verbatim, but the kind of verbatim was, I don't want to do this because this will mess up my money. And I said, well, I appreciate that. But I also appreciate that you have the most bargaining power of everyone. And if you stand with this and become a part of this, not only as a unit, you help lift everybody because you have the most bargaining power. And this person also happened to be in contract negotiations. I said, so remember, you could just be worried about you right now, or you could be mindful that everybody can be pulled into this and everybody be lifted up because everybody has a good contract. And so fast forward, and I mean, it was almost literally to the day. It was like a week later. I was called into the office, and the process was beginning for how the station was trying to tell me that I wasn't doing what I was contractually obligated to do, even though I had the receipts. You already know. But essentially, I was fired for starting a union. Doesn't say that. That's not what because we all know that union busting is illegal. But that was the gist of it. I also want to say here that part of what was going on here in both things is that I was very reluctant to speak about my experiences publicly. I have been quiet as a church mouse, and part of it is because I'm a private person. Y'all know I don't really talk much. I mean, I'm intentional about the things that I share in a public space. And I also am intentional about not recognizing that radio is small. And as someone who knows how small it is, disparaging companies who could potentially be employers later on down the line is not a strategy for success sometimes. But as I'm looking at the current climate, I'm recognizing that protecting companies that are uninterested in protecting me, in protecting us, not only protecting their employees, but also protecting their community, the people that make them possible, it's not a strategy. It's not. And there's something that needs to shift, not only in us as people who are employed by these companies, but also as us who make these, who make these companies possible, who circulate our dollars into these companies. I learned a very big lesson this time around, even though I want to say I learned it before, is that you always have to stand on business. there's not a thing that I would change in what I did. There's not a thing that I would change. Rabble rousing, I wouldn't say so. Just logic. We have to take care of each other. And there are always going to be people who have the most power or the most bargaining power who are going to be more interested in not upsetting their apple cart than not having anybody to work with. It's always going to be, there are always going to be people who's like, but I got mine. And I guess the question comes, are you going to be willing to do it anyway? Are you going to be willing to go forward anyway? Because everybody don't want to come. So, and I guess the key thing here is, what are your core values? And are you willing to stand on business? So I just want to share that little brief tidbit. This is a little longer than usual, but bye.